fascinating story coming out of the Gauteng High Court. Because when last did you use the word sif? It's one of those South African terms that aptly describe a situation. The word sif, because here's the story. A couple, Louisa and Johannes Arpen-Schultz, they were operating a canteen on a pharmacy's premises. They filed a complaint with the Equality Court because a patron of their little restaurant found a cockroach in their stew. And then they were called sif, dirty, disgusting, unhygienic, by the landlord, Louis Skeepers. The couple then charged Louis Skeepers for using that term, hate speech, because they say their definition around the word sif targeted homosexuality, that it is a truncated, shortened word for syphilis, and that they made the argument that there is a connection between STIs and the connotation of homosexuality. The court did find, yes, that may be the etymological foundation of, but the court kicked out. The case did not find that that Louis Skeepers' utterances were in the realm of hate speech. But I love South African words. I love the foundation, the art, the etymological basis for many of the words that we use. So join now Professor Gerhard Van Huyssteen. He's a professor van Afrikaanse en Nederlandse Taalkunde at the University of the Noordwes. He's the professor of vloekwoorde. He in fact runs the website vloek.co.za, trying to create a record of particularly Afrikaans and South African swear words. Good morning, Gerhard. Nice to talk to you again. When we talk about the word sif, when I hear sif, someone says, oh, that's sif, I kind of say, oh, that's sort of unsanitary, it's a little bit disgusting, it's a little bit off. But when we talk about the art van die word, where does it come from? Where does sif originate? Is the court right that, yes, it was used as connotations, as sort of a derogatory term for an STI and its connotations to homosexuality?
Lester, yeah, so I've done a thorough search on this. There are some international dictionaries that says sif comes from syphilis. It is weird that it would be that. You know, let's take a word like another sort of nasty illness. Let's take cancer, for example. Will you ever say, oh, that's so cancer? That's so syphilis. That's so... And then you shorten it to sif. The likelihood of that happening is very small. Furthermore, this word, this adjective is only attested in Afrikaans and in South African English. The chances are much bigger that it comes from the Afrikaans adverb sif. When you say a road has been run down, then you say the pad is sif gery, nee? Of you are very tired after a long, ek is nou sif. And then that comes from being tired, being, you know, going into being unhealthy, being, just messy and unhygienic and so on. So to me, I couldn't find any real evidence that this sif comes from syphilis. There is just no real evidence of that. That it lives in English, also very, very low instances of that. I searched, for example, on Google for "don't be sif," which is sort of utterance that you might get. Just can't find anything of that. So I will, in the first place, not agree with the fact that the word necessarily comes from syphilis. That's one small part of it. The other one, to say that now, if you call someone sif, has to do with homophobic attitudes and so on. Lester, that to me is just a reach. If I can say, I'm a gay man, I can say to anyone, listen, you're sif, and I will not mean you're sif because you are heterosexual, or you are sif because you are black, or you are sif because you are... No, sif is a general term used to mean unhealthy. En 'n lekker South African English and Afrikaans term for that as well.
Who decides on the intensity of what a curse word means? Is it in the deliverer of the message, or is it in the receiver of the message? I know that you love swear words just like I do, but you're also quite sensitive to our history in South Africa and generally a nice guy. But you also enjoy swear words. But who decides whether I say something, whether that then is offensive or not? The deliverer or the receiver of that message?
It used to be that it's the deliverer, the intention of the deliverer. But Lester, society has shifted a lot towards the person that is being offended. And therefore, I think the judge was trying to say, all right, let me put myself into your shoes and see, could I have been offended? And she said, right, you might have been offended, but that's not enough. Because of that shift, we have to be careful with what we say and so on, because we might offend someone. But Lester, there's also always a limit to these things, right? You can't reach and just everything. If someone says, "Oh, you are green," then think, "Oh, you insulted me because I'm a homosexual now." One should be very, very careful with that.
Are there words that have started with serious meaning but have over time been diluted to mean something else? Talking to Mario about this conversation, he says in the past he would never use the word etter in front of his parents, but now etter is something that many kids on the playground use. I always thought etter is something that you dig out in the corner of your eye.
I hear you. And that's sort of more in that direction, of pus, of bodily excretions and so on. Those things are always going into some direction where it becomes uglier or so. But to get to the question of, are there ordinary words that turn into bad words? All the time. Let's think of a word, again, in the South African context, that has been in front of the courts as well. An ordinary word like baboon, I mean, you see a baboon in the Kruger National Park or whatever, that has become a really bad a racial slur in South Africa. Not in other countries. They don't get it. But in South Africa, it has become that. And that is the kind of context that we have to be sensitive about to see how words are developing and getting bad connotations.
What about words that go in the opposite direction? There is a term that young people use as a term of going on a flight without any phones, without any reading materials, and they will spend, let's say, the 2-hour flight between Cape Town and Johannesburg raw dogging it. Raw dogging used to be associated with unprotected sex. Younger people use it as a term saying, I'm just going in at it, I don't care, no other stimuli, I'm just going to go on this flight, I'm going to raw dog it.
And that, we call that formally ameliorization. That's the process. It becomes softer. Another good example here, excellent example, is the term gay that was in the 1920s, 30s and so on, became a derogatory term for homosexual people. And then they reclaimed the word. You also see that with the N-word in America, for example. It's a heavy offensive term, but it's being reclaimed by that part of the community that's offended by it and getting a totally different meaning. So we see that all the time in language also happening. And that's what we call the euphemistic tretmo. Words that's now on vogue, that you can use, will become dysphemistic, or those words that are euphemisms currently can become dysphemistic, etc. Though these words are in rotation, they never stay the same and stationary.
Gosh, one day I'm going to come up to Potch, to the University of the Noordwest. I want to sit in on a class because I find it absolutely fascinating. In the meantime, I have to make use of your Facebook page as well as your website, vloek.co.za. Professor Gerhard Van Huyssteen, Professor Vloekwoorde. He's actually a professor of Afrikaanse en Nederlandse Taalkunde at die Universiteit van die Noordwes.